welcome to this week's episode of Leadership Soundbites with Michelle and my guest, Jason Devlin. So Jason is a results specialist. Jason and I connected on LinkedIn. He's kind enough, gracious enough to come on and share his story because we're around leadership lessons and leadership journey. And so I'm excited. You've got a quote that you're going to kick us off with. So I'm excited to have you on the podcast and learn more about you and from you. So welcome, sir.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Michelle, for those kind words and the honor and being fortunate enough to have this platform to kind of share just my take on leadership with you guys. So the quote that really stands out to me is I heard it from Tony Robbins. Says, "You're either the example or you're the warning." So make sure you're doing the right things, especially in front of the people that you're trying to lead. And as a parent, it is really important because they're around you all the time, right? 24/7. There's no off time, but especially when you're leading others.
That's so true. It's interesting because you mentioned offline that you've got a 13-year-old. I know I mentioned to you I'm going to be attending. It's so funny, Tony Robbins quote, because I'll be attending the Tony Robbins event, Unleash the Power Within, for the second time. But it's one of those things that your quote to me when I first heard it, it's literally about choices.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we have that choice to either go as an example and walk the talk, or we can go, be the warning of don't do it my way.
Yeah.
But I think about that, Jason. I think about the fact that it's not always easy to do that example part
Yeah.
of leadership. So
It has
what
to be
stands out
authentic.
for you? Yeah, authentic, and what stands out for you from your journey, basically from where you were when you started to where you are
Yeah.
today? What stands out?
Well, the biggest takeaway I've learned from the 20 plus years of leading teams and building and hiring and training and developing, you know, is people will, while you're present, they'll do what you say. But outside of your presence, they're going to do what they've seen. And so kind of going back to that, you're the warning or the example, they're going to pick up 120% of the bad habits that you have. And they're
Yeah,
really only going to pick up 75, 80% of the good habits that you have. So making sure that, like you said, the decisions and the choices that you're being present and intentional with those choices. And a lot of it comes from where you start from. If you start from here, and in your heart you truly are coming from a good place, and in
yeah.
your belief is you're doing what's right, it'll be a lot easier because your beliefs are what make our decisions faster than we do most of the time. And being able to have that truly in your heart, it's transparent to the people that you lead. They can tell when you're faking it.
So clearly you're at this place that you've got a clear idea of leadership. I mean, you're
Mm,
articulating what it is to be a leader that's effective, that's connecting, it's going to be the example.
yeah.
But I know from talking to you, it wasn't always that way for you.
No, it's not. Yeah, that was my
So
20-year, my 50,000 feet view of it, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So what stands out for you in that journey? What's a pivotal moment for you that
Yeah.
you look back and you're going to go, I went from maybe I was the warning, right?
Yeah.
To
Right.
where I stepped into the example. I mean,
Yeah.
what was that for you?
Well, there's not much hair left here on this thing. Just trial and error. Really, I was in the military as a younger man, and finished top of my class. Came from a military family, so a lot of high standards. Overachiever. When I got out of the service, I became an entrepreneur. I went into work
Yeah,
for my business for myself, and what I did was I hired and trained and developed sales reps that represented products inside of retail stores. And so I worked with a lot of top brands in the satellite and television industry and some of the big box retailers across the country. And duplication was basically the golden ticket in that industry. The faster I could hire someone, train them how to sell, teach them how to train others to sell, and then teach them how to run a business, I can open up more satellite businesses. And so therefore our successes were genuinely tied together. You do better, I do
yeah.
better. So being that that was the model, it was very simple to give that somebody to tie that together to make it make sense to the other person that you're leading. And
Right.
kind of to circle back, taking a long way to answer your question, circle back, when you first start out, I remember personally just happy to have a team, right? Just being excited to be that new leader and wanting to do everything and making sure that, this new guy that you got on your team, he's going to help you build this, you guys are going to build this dynasty together. And, sometimes you're a little too kind, right? A little too easygoing, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes leadership, sometimes there needs to be a little friction turn to get a little traction. So you kind of falter in being too nice. And then when you kind of take some lumps doing that, you feel like you've been taken advantage of, or you missed out on some opportunity because you're there I go again being Mr. Nice Guy. Then you kind of overcorrect, right? And then you start becoming that dictator, right? That person that is just completely strictly by the book, always hard nosed and driven. And so you kind of falter the other way, right? And then you're able to kind of find your balance, and from promoting and hiring and creating other entrepreneurs over a 10-year span, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people you've worked with, you kind of start to see that pattern within people. And as a leader, I felt my job kind of grew into helping them close the gap
Yeah.
between Mr. Nice Guy, Too Tough, and then finding your own lane and kind of helping and guiding an individual to get to that point.
So who was that for you? Because what I heard in the story that you just said is I went in, I was excited to be around people, and people took advantage. And I'm just paraphrasing on certain things, right?
Yep.
And so then I had a story I was telling myself. I had to be, basically tough so people couldn't take advantage. So I swung the pendulum the other way.
Yep.
Um, and I have to imagine at some point someone's giving you feedback so
Yep.
that you realize the pendulum swing that other way was just as disservice to people and yourself as
Yeah.
the pendulum the other way. How did that come about?
Well, I think your bank account is the one that tells you that you're doing it the wrong way, right? That's the first indicator. But just, in my industry, it was a high turnover. In sales,
Okay.
there's a lot of turnover. It's not for everybody, commission driven business. So not everybody's going to thrive in that environment.
Yeah.
And so when you look around and the people that you kind of wish weren't around are the only ones left, and the people that you really
Mm.
believed in are the ones that are walking out the door, you got to do some self-analysis. And um, hopefully the people who are on the way out are at least being honest with you and telling you why they're leaving.
Yeah.
But leadership is being present,
Mm-hmm.
because if no one cares what you know until they know that you care,
Mm-hmm.
and until you can take it, until you can be transparently transactional, meaning when you're in a leadership position, typically we both know this is a transactional relationship,
Okay.
but there are going to be aspects of our relationship that's not going to be transactional. And I have to make sure that when it is a transactional conversation, or there is going to be a transactional exchange, that we're very open and honest about that and
Mm-hmm.
where we both benefit in it, as opposed to just kind of playing a song and telling a story type thing
Mm-hmm.
to someone. That way, the person that you're leading knows you're coming from a good place.
It's interesting. I mean, and I had to laugh when you said it. It's like your bank account tells you that what you're doing is not working. But for me when I think about that, because for me, when I was on a certain leadership path, it was about feedback from people.
Yeah.
And what I hear from you is you got feedback from people that were basically walking out the door. I had one former colleague that talked about leadership workshops and everything else, and people vote with their feet.
Yeah.
So when you had people leaving,
Yeah.
your leadership structure in that business, they voted with their feet. They're like,
Yeah.
I'm out of here, dude. I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
But for you to come back and stabilize, what does that journey look like for you? And are you still learning and growing?
Well, you got to be learning and growing. You're either growing or you're dying, right? At the end of the day.
Yeah.
And when you think you know it all, that's when you're in trouble. That's when something's coming. Um, it's just like anything, Michelle. I mean, if you are, if you're going to be a farmer, right? And you buy land and you grow crops and you have a bad season, and you can't just like pack up and go do something else all of a sudden. You gotta learn from your mistakes. You gotta keep going. So, but there got to be a passion for farming that started it all. And
Yeah.
so, um, being that no matter what it is that you're going to do in life, there's going to be negatives.
Yeah.
That's a fact. And if you are not anchored by your passion and your heart to whatever mission or objective or outcome that you're going after, you're not going to go through the tough times.
Mhm.
You're not going to go through and develop that grit that's required to be successful, because no one I read a lot of autobiographies.
Mhm.
That's part of something that helped me on my leadership journey, was realizing that, because I wore a suit every day. I mean, a quick story. I remember I was building a team, losing a team, building a team, and I had just expanded out. I had opened up a new market, and so my bank account was almost completely flat. Had a couple bad weeks, was completely flat. I went to this conference, and at this conference, they had gave us these big bonus checks, right? And they were reflective of what we had already earned in the year, but they were doing it on like these big Prices Right checks. And
Yeah.
so I had maybe $80 in my account, and I had this big, huge Prices Right check that said 86,000 on it. And I'm walking through the airport at DFW, flying back, broken. Probably couldn't buy dinner at the airport, but I had this huge check. And it's not about where you're at; it's about where you're going.
Mhm.
And it's compared to a ship in the sea, right? Your ship could be ahead of my ship, but if my sails are pointed in the right direction and yours aren't, I'm going to win.
Mhm.
And every autobiography that I've read, it's never been just a straight meteoric rise to success. Nothing ever happened. It was perfect. I've never read one of those stories before. It may have happened, but to my knowledge, everybody's gone through something.
Yeah.
And you thinking your way out of things is a trap, because when you go into the active thinking, you're accessing your conscious mind, which is simply a record of the past. And that's why people do a lot of things over and over again.
Uh-huh.
And when you second guess yourself or question yourself and you don't take action, you just kind of stuck. And
Mhm.
so when you come from your heart and you lead with your passion, um, you get out of the tyranny of the how, the briar patch of how I'm going to get out of this, and you get into well, I'm going to do this, so I'm going to find a way.
Uh-huh.
um, and that's kind of what it takes to be successful at anything, from my experience.
I absolutely love listening to you because I mean you're like you've got all these little stories and analogies and the visuals that come to mind for me when you're doing that, but you're absolutely right, because if you get into this overthinking, over processing place that we can tend to get into, you're not moving forward. You're literally building walls around your ability to do anything, continue to learn and grow.
Yeah,
I love the call out around anchoring what you decide to do and where you put your efforts into something you've got passion around.
yeah,
Do it for the right reasons. Don't do it for just the paycheck at the end of the day. Don't do it for
yeah,
all that stuff. Because you're absolutely right. It doesn't matter what you're in and what you're doing. There's gonna be barriers and challenges and stuff that come up. And I can imagine, can you imagine if a farmer bought the farm and, or, all that stuff, and then one year the crops were bad and they just literally packed up and left? And I'm sure there have been farmers that have done that.
yeah,
To your point, if you're going to make the investment in whatever it may be, make sure it's something that you actually want to grow.
yeah. And be transparent with your story and your struggle, because everybody wants to feel strong and courageous and feel like they have grit and see it through. And if all you do is show an aura of success, or everything is great and hunky dory, people just think, oh well, it's just because life is easy for him, or he's got this, or he owns the business. Of course, he's got money, and not
Yeah.
understanding that as a business owner, there's some times where you're negative, You know, and there's some times where you're reinvesting back in your business, and you're getting the smallest paycheck. You know, on Friday, you're passing out the smallest paycheck to yourself.
Yep.
You know, and um, it's important that people understand when you're in a leadership position that it's not always going to be sunshines and rainbows. And really quick, I used to have, this is a conversation I would start with any new person that I would work with.
Yeah.
I say, Michelle, hey, congratulations. We're going to move forward. We're going to bring in. I got two types of relationships here at this company. One is every time we speak, it's, you know, we're going to use, you know, it's going to be nice. You're going to feel really good. We're going to talk about the good things you're doing. We're going to, you know, we're always going to make sure that you're feeling okay, and you got a smile on your face. And at the end of the year, you probably won't be working here, or you'll probably be financially in the exact same space or worse off than you were. Or we can have some tough conversations in here. We can understand that we're both working equally hard towards the common goal for both of our success. And we can have some tough conversations here and there. I may say some things that you may not like, but I guarantee it'll always be me and you, one-on-one, away from everybody else, never in front of anybody. Maybe frustrated sometimes, may not always like me, but at the end of the year, you'll be a lot further ahead than where we are now. Which relationship would you rather have here in this office? And everybody always is going to say, of course, you know, coach me hard, or I want to get to that point.
Yeah.
And that kind of just opens, okay, well, let's go. And give them the same ability to challenge my leadership as well. Because if I don't give you the space to challenge my leadership, then you're going to keep that all inside, and I'm going to figure out that I'm a bad leader when you walk out the door, like you say, with your feet instead of with your words.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think part of it, when I go back to one of the key elements in leadership, is setting expectations.
Yeah.
And so through that conversation, through the way that you've described, you know, hey, we've got a choice here, right? We've got two different ways. You're actually setting expectations. And so when people volunteer and go, I'm signing up and I want conversation too, that's the kind of relationship I want.
Yeah.
They're setting themselves up, and you both agree to what the expectation is in the relationship. And I think it's powerful stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I learned something. 20 years.
Yeah, getting beat over the head, autobiographies, trial and error, looking at your bank account going down to nothing.
Yeah.
I appreciate you, Jason. Thank you, and your time and your perspective and your interesting analogies and stories. I love it. And I mean, the visual that I have with you walking through the airport with this huge freaking check, like cracks me up.
Yeah.
So here's a question for you, sir, as
Yeah.
the final one is, based on all the stuff that we talked about today, what are one or two things that you would like leaders or people listening to walk away with?
Well, number one is, you know, no matter where you're at or what you're doing, there's always a chance to be a leader. You know, being a leader in your role. Be
Mm-hmm.
be be an all-star, you know, in your role. Doc Rivers, NBA coach, he would tell his players, not everybody here is an all-star, but everyone on this team can be an all-star in what they're expected to do in their role here on this team. And so when I would make it a point when I went into a retail store that I was going to go and set up and do my thing and represent my clients in. You know, I would, if I seen carts in the parking lot, I would gather up the carts and put them in the thing for them. Or if I came up and there was some merchandise that was strewn about, I would help reshelf it back for them. And I didn't profit off that. I didn't make anything off that. That wasn't my role. I wasn't doing that, and I didn't have any say over what was going on in the retail store. I was setting up my own shop, but I was being a leader, showing the person that I was with, if I was training someone for the day, that I'm not above that. That I'm going to take every opportunity I can to go above and beyond, regardless of what my role is, regardless of what my title says or what my position is. I'm going to make it a point to treat everybody that I come in contact with like they're the president of the United States. Oh, I probably shouldn't say that in today's climate.
You're fine. You're
treat them
fine.
like they are the CEO of the company.
Yeah.
And so for me, the biggest takeaway I would want anybody who is going to have the privilege of become a leader is that uh, every chance you get to show the people that you're working with that you're not better than them and they're not better than you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not higher than you. I'm not beneath you. We're right here.
Yeah.
And you can't just do it with saying it. It's got to be actions that you take.
Mm-hmm.
So make sure you're taking the right actions to be the example. And because you can't lead anybody you're not connected with, and you can't
Mm-hmm.
lead anybody if you're not out in front.
It's interesting. Thank you for that. Because what came to mind for me too is I agree with all that stuff. And it's about being consistent in doing that, right? So it's not
Yeah.
you do it one time because someone's watching you, and then you don't do it the next time because someone's not watching. But
Yeah.
all that stuff that you talked about, it brought me back my father when I was growing up. This is an example of some of the things and it created this awareness in me. It's like he would call my sister and I over at something. He goes, "This piece of paper that's on the ground, on the floor, it's been here for 3 days." And in my head, I'm like, okay. And he goes, "And no one's picked it up." And I'm thinking, you saw it. Why didn't you? I didn't say it, but it was in my head, right?
Yeah.
But what it caused me to do is pay attention to the stuff that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Pay attention to the carts in the parking lot because they're at a client that you're working at, and that's part of you're part of them. You're part of that team. So
Yeah.
as part of the team, what can you do to help move it forward, right?
Yeah.
Carts in the parking lot, whatever it may be, picking up the piece of paper that's on the floor. And so all of a sudden I wasn't walking through life with blinders on and only looking at the stuff that was my stuff.
Yeah.
I'm walking through life going, how can I help? What else is there that I can do while I'm on my way from here to there?
Take initiative.
Right. And there's plenty. There's plenty.
Yeah.
So thank you for that reminder because I haven't thought about that in a while for my father saying that. Jason, I appreciate your time. I would love to continue this conversation another time as well.
Anytime.
Um, Thank you very much. And until next time, this has been Leadership Soundbites. So please like, share, subscribe. And if you know a leader like Jason, or you're a leader like Jason that wants to chat and share some of your journey, give me a call. Message me, do whatever. So until next time, have a great one. Thank you.